Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you had a nice weekend. It was a little hot this weekend, but I hope you got outside and enjoyed some of the weather. So if you can hear me okay, please type yes into the chat window. Okay, great. Okay, it's nice to see everyone. And good, I'm glad to hear that you had a good finish with your softball league, Quinn. Very good. Okay. So, just a couple items before we get started today. You know, at the end of last week, I sent out a study guide for your upcoming lecture exam this Thursday. Do you have any questions about that study guide? Do you have any questions about the study guide or the exam that will take place this Thursday? Okay, everybody's silent. Okay, Quinn, you asked for 4B. What's your question?
Well, sorry, my brother was talking. But I was just wondering, do you mean like the stages in the cycle, or do you mean like NADH? Do you mean FDA? For like, let me pull up the question. Give me a second.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. I'm asking, like, it says name the 3 groups of energy producing chemical reactions. So do you mean like the stages, like the Krebs cycle, the glycolysis? Like, do you mean those, or do you mean like NADH or FDA?
So Quinn, your question reveals a misunderstanding of the content, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
probably.
NADH is a molecule.
Yes.
It's not a chemical reaction, okay?
But it's
So yes, I'm looking for things like Krebs cycle to answer your question.
Cool.
Okay.
Right.
Other questions? Okay, so this Thursday you will have your first lecture exam on the Class Marker website. And I see that most of you did register and take the practice exam. So did you have any problems with the Class Marker website? Do you have any concerns about it at this time?
Yes, I don't have the registration code.
Okay, Matt, the registration codes were sent out in a previous email. Please send me an email and I will respond to you with that document, okay?
Let me dig through it. I was looking on D2L, that's why I didn't check my email.
Okay. Any other problems with Class Marker? Okay, so just so you know, on Thursday, the exam on Class Marker has 2 components. It has a vocab component and an essay component. So when you log in on Thursday, there's going to be 2 exams waiting for you. They're 2 exams, but they're part of exam 1. You have the vocab portion and the essay portion, and you must complete both of them by the end of the day on Thursday. The exam will open up at 7 a.m. and it will close at midnight. So you have all day to take the exams.
We have 2 questions. How much the test worth again?
Pete, could you please speak up or type your answer into the chat window?
How much the test worth?
How much is the test worth? I'm not going to give you a point value on that. Hold on one second while I get the syllabus. Exam 1 is 26% of your course grade. So it's over 25%. It's basically 1/4 of your entire course grade is the first exam here. Okay, so it's very important. Okay. Other questions?
Will we have class on Thursday, or we're just going to take the test
Okay.
all
All
day?
right. So if I don't answer your question, please repeat that afterwards, Pete. So on Thursday, you have all day to take the exams, but I encourage you not to wait till later in the day. For example, if you wait till say 10 p.m. at night and you have a technical problem of some kind with the computer, I'm not going to be around to help you, okay? So I encourage you to take it early in the day. Also, obviously, the later in the day you take it, probably the more tired you are, so that typically reduces your grade on the exam, and we don't want that, right? We want a good grade on the exam. Also, be sure that wherever you take your exam, you're not going to have distractions, right? There's not going to be people running around in the room with you. Okay, and the reason for that is because once you start that exam, you cannot stop it. It cannot be paused. You must complete the exam when you start it. Okay, so to answer your question, Pete, if this was a normal semester and we were meeting face-to-face in class, then you would take the vocab portion online and you would take the essays in class with me on campus at school. So we're doing things a little bit differently here. We're taking everything online, but I do feel it's appropriate to give you a little bit of our normal lecture time as part of your test taking window. So I will put this in my email to you this afternoon. We will have lecture on Thursday, but it will be a shortened lecture. So lecture on Thursday will start at 12:55 p.m. Okay, so that gives you an hour and 15 minutes of lecture class time to take your exams if you want to do that. And I encourage you to do that. Okay, so again, I'll put that in the email today, but Thursday's lecture will start at 12:55 p.m. Okay? All right. So question from Fiona, if in the middle of the exam you get an internet issue. Okay, so Fiona, if that happens, first thing is to take a deep breath, because I'm not going to damage your grade because of a technical issue with the computer or the internet. If you have a problem, such as your computer crashes in the middle of the exam, send me an email. Tell me what happened. I will be able to go in and reset things for you. Now, if that did happen and I had to reset, you will have to take the entire exam from the start, but you will be able to take it, okay? So don't worry about that. So Emily, the exams open at 7 a.m. on Thursday, okay? So Matt, what is the allotted time limit for the exam? For the vocab portion of the exam, I believe you have about 39 minutes. For the essay portion of the exam, you have 1 hour and 15 minutes. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So folks, don't worry about any technical problems with the software, the computer, internet on Thursday. If it happens, we will get through it and your grade will not be impacted by it. Just send me an email and I will take care of it, okay? All right, so any final questions about what's gonna happen this Thursday? Okay. It's nice to see so many of you with your video cameras on. That helps me when we're having class together. I appreciate that and want to encourage you to continue to do that. So Pete, will we have lab Thursday? Yes, we will definitely have lab Thursday. And so that brings me to my next topic. Normally I would assign some homework ahead of time to be prepared for our lab discussion, but because you have an exam coming up on Thursday, I'm not going to do that this week. But Thursday we will have lab, and I want to encourage you to please be sure that you have a pack of colored pencils with you for Thursday's lab, because you're going to be doing some drawing at home during lab. Okay, so if you have a pack of colored pencils, or you can pick up, you know, a pack of colored pencils at the supermarket or CVS or something for $3-4, please do so. It will help you on Thursday. Okay, anything else? Okay. All right. Well, folks, if something does come up, you know, you can always speak up or send me an email. Okay. And we'll get things taken care of for you. So without any further ado here, I think we will finish chapter 4 and do what we need to do for chapter 5. Okay. So at the end of last class, we were introducing you to the 11 organ systems on page 74 of your textbook. And we started talking about your skin. And we spent some time pointing out, you know, the skin is an organ, and the definition of an organ is a three-dimensional object with multiple different tissues. And so at the end of last class, we pointed out that your skin does have all the 4 tissue categories: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. It's all embedded in the fabric of your skin, which is highlighted on page 75 of your textbook. So let's finish up that conversation. To do that, I'm going to go to our shared Microsoft Word document. Okay, so bear with me a sec. So the chat window is up at this time, and the Microsoft document is also up at this time. So you can type into the chat window, or if you really need me, unmute your microphone, okay? All right, so we're going to continue our conversation about skin. Skin discussion continued. And so let's start out with listing some of the primary functions of your skin. Okay, so obviously protection. Protection is one of the primary functions of your skin. You know, it may not be a pleasant experience to fall down and skin your knee on the macadam, but it's certainly better to it's certainly better to damage the skin at your knee than it is to damage more internal structures like the patella, you know, the bone, or underlying cartilages and ligaments. What I'm saying is, if you have to damage anything, better to do the skin than anything that's more deep inside the body. Okay, now when we talk about protection, there's several aspects to that. Okay, so there's the physical protection that I was talking about, you know. Okay, so your skin provides some physical protection against harm to the internal body structures. Okay. Your skin also represents a barrier against microorganisms that would like to enter your body and potentially cause harm. Okay, obviously there's nothing perfect, because you can cut your skin and open an area where some bacteria can get in, and then you develop an infection, right? But as long as we have undamaged skin, it does provide a physical barrier. Okay, so it's a physical barrier, protects us against bacteria and viruses, and honestly other categories of microbes as well, fungi, protozoa, that might cause harm if they actually get into the body. There's also a protective property of your skin when it comes to sunlight, right? When the skin is able to protect you from ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Now, obviously, it's not perfect because we do know people end up getting skin cancer for a variety of reasons. And sometimes it is because they've had an improper exposure to the sun. And, that typically, when you develop skin cancer, it's typically a delayed response. In other words, you may have caused harm to your skin when you were at the beach 20 years ago and you got a bad sunburn, and it's taken a few decades for that problem to fully develop, okay? But generally speaking, your skin is very good at protecting the underlying cells of the body, okay? The cells of the skin manufacture a special pigment called melanin, which is actually protective. This pigment actually helps absorb ultraviolet radiation from the sun and prevent that ultraviolet radiation from damaging your skin cells, okay? All right. So yes, just reading my notes here. Protection against ultraviolet radiation from sun. The cells of the skin manufacture a special pigment called melanin, which protects skin cells and deeper tissues in the body from sunlight damage. Okay. Here's a question for you. What part of your cells can be damaged by sunlight? What part of your cells can be damaged by sunlight? If you know the answer to that, please type that into the chat window. Right? Well, remember, skin is an organ. Skin is an organ. It's made of multiple tissues, and tissues are made of cells. So, Alyssa, okay. Okay, so thank you folks for answering my questions. And the way you answer tells me whether you understand something or not. So we have a few answers on the chat window that make me think there's a misunderstanding, right? For some of you to answer dermis, that tells me that you're not understanding the question. For you to answer skin, you're not understanding the question. Okay, the question is what part of your cells, right? Cells make up the skin. The skin doesn't make up your cells. Cells make up the dermis. The dermis does not make up your cells. You see the difference? It's an issue of what things are smaller than other things. What things are smaller, which things are larger. So be very careful, again, that you start to develop this intuition for the size of things and how you understand that atoms are smaller than molecules. Molecules are smaller than cells. Cells are smaller than tissues. Tissues are smaller than organs. Okay. So Quinn, you say the cell membrane can be damaged. That's true. Matt, you say either DNA or RNA. That is also true. The reality of it is that radiation can basically damage any molecule inside your cells. But I will say this, the content of your cells that is most dangerous to damage is certainly the DNA, because damage to the DNA can then lend itself to diseases like cancer, okay? Okay. Now, I know that we have not really gone into great detail when it comes to DNA and the structure of DNA, although who can tell me what the basic building block of DNA is called? Type that into the chat window if you know. What's the basic building block of DNA? Okay, Quinn, no. Your answer, Quinn, I appreciate you trying. I really do. I appreciate you trying, but your answer also reveals a misunderstanding. I understand nucleic acids, okay? Not peptide chains, Matt, no. Okay, Emily, nucleotides. Okay, folks, so I'm going to pick on you. At this point, 2 days from your first exam, we should not be getting so many incorrect answers, right? That tells you there's some more studying that needs to take place. Okay. DNA is made of nucleotides. DNA is made of nucleotides. And one of those nucleotides is called thymine. Don't worry about it. I'm not gonna beat you up on the exam about this. But there's an abnormal structure in the DNA that forms when the nucleotides are hit by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. When sunlight strikes DNA, an abnormal chemical structure called a thymine dimer. Okay, I'm spelling it in your notes for you. Called a thymine dimer can develop and promote the formation of cancer. So I'm not going to have that on your exam, but if you're interested in this in any way, if you have some intellectual curiosity about it, I'm going to suggest that you Google thymine dimers and cancer. Okay, Google that, and I'm sure you'll get plenty of things to satisfy your curiosity. Okay, so getting back to our primary topic here, the cells of your skin manufacture pigments which help protect the DNA, helps prevent thymine dimers from forming, which are dangerous because they promote cancer development. Do you have any questions right now? Okay, all right, let's continue here. So we're talking about functions of skin, right? And we said that number one is protection, and there's a variety of aspects to that. The fact that it provides physical protection for the interior of your body, it acts as a physical barrier against microbes that want to enter your body, and it protects you against the damaging effects of sunlight. Okay, number two here is that your skin helps regulate your body temperature. Right? You know this, that, your skin will allow for sweat to accumulate on the surface, and through evaporation, you release heat energy from the surface of your body. So when you're overheated, you sweat and you cool yourself down. And when you're cold in the wintertime, your skin, the structure of your skin and the blood vessels that serve the dermal layer of your skin, all of that stuff constricts a little bit, and you actually don't sweat, and you hold on to what little heat energy you already have, and it helps keep you warmer, okay? All right. Number three, another function of the skin is that your skin provides a structure to store components of your nervous system that allow you to detect sensations on the surface of your body, such as the sensation of pressure, somebody giving you a hug, such as the sensation of pain, somebody slapping you, or you getting hit with a volleyball that was hit really hard, or even temperature, right? You go outside and you start to feel the warmth of the air right now. That's all due to nerve endings that are embedded in the dermal layer of your skin. So the skin provides a structure to store components of the nervous system that allow you to detect sensations such as pressure, pain, temperature, even itchiness, gang. When you get an itch on your arm that you got to scratch, that's caused by molecules in the atmosphere falling on top of certain receptors in your skin and activating a nerve impulse to the brain, okay? Itchiness, etc. Okay, so we wouldn't, our experience of life would be much less enjoyable, much less rich, much less vibrant if we didn't have nerve endings embedded in our skin, okay? All right, one final thing I'll mention here is that your skin is involved in the synthesis of vitamin D. Okay, now this is a pretty deep topic. I could spend the rest of the lecture on this, and I don't want to do that, but I'll simply mention to you the skin is involved in the synthesis of vitamin D. Okay, now for those of you that are into your nutrition and things, you know when you say vitamin D, you're actually referring to a group of molecules. You're not referring to a single individual molecule, okay? But that being said, the version of vitamin D that most people think about is actually vitamin D3, which is known as calcitriol. Okay. Most notably vitamin D3, calcitriol. So Pete, you asked, do animals or bugs have nerves like us? The answer is definitely yes, Pete. Animals have nerves and insects and bugs have nerves. That's correct. Okay. Okay, so can anybody tell me what vitamin D is important for? Okay. What is vitamin D important for? Pete, you say it's good for the skin. Well, you're not wrong about that. You're not wrong about that. Okay. Gang, what does vitamin D allow us to, okay, good for your bones. Well, why is it good for your bones, Jennifer? Alyssa, why is it good for your bones? Or how's it good? Okay, just quickly. Good, Alyssa, that's exactly right. Okay, the primary feature here I'm after is vitamin D3 is absolutely critical to allow your body to absorb calcium from your diet. So if you drink, if you drink milk, you need vitamin D present in the small intestine so you can properly absorb that calcium from the milk, okay? Right, Alyssa, like vitamin C and iron. Okay, now vitamin D is not involved in the iron absorption. It's involved in the calcium absorption, but you have the right idea. So vitamin D is important. It allows us to absorb calcium from our diet. Okay. There's another question. What is calcium important for? Okay, so now we have an idea that vitamin D is important because it allows us to absorb calcium. That's a big deal. And what I want to show you is why it's important that we absorb calcium. Do any of you know anything in the body that's heavily influenced by calcium? Let me start with one that both Alyssa and Jennifer put in, okay, calcium is important for bone health. Okay. And the reason it's important for bone health is because your bones are a storage depot for minerals like calcium and phosphorus. So bone health is definitely a big deal. Teeth are not bones, but they share similar embryonic origin, but they are not bones, no. Okay. The calcium will strengthen teeth. That's true because the enamel covering the surface of your teeth has calcium in it. So it promotes teeth health. Okay. Anything else? Pete, but bones and teeth don't dissolve. Well, tell me what the solvent is you're talking about, because I bet you I can get them to dissolve with acid. Okay, so that's correct, Pete. Bones and teeth won't dissolve in water, but you give them a mild acid and they will start to dissolve. In fact, Pete, that's the reason you get cavities, because the acids in your mouth start to break down the enamel on the teeth. Okay. All right, gang, let me give you a couple more here, and I appreciate your participation. I really do, okay? Please don't be offended if I tell you that maybe your understanding is a little bit off. That's my job, right? That's what you've paid me to do, okay? So, calcium is absolutely critical to enable your muscles to contract, right? You would not be able to walk across the floor. Your muscles in your legs would not be able to contract properly if they did not have calcium, okay? So muscle contraction, okay? Here's a big deal, folks. Can anybody tell me what the primary muscle of your body is that allows you to bring air into your lungs? What's that muscle called? Okay, Matt, nicely done. It is the diaphragm. The diaphragm and the intercostal muscles work together to allow you to bring air into the body and push air out of the body. Those muscles could not do their work without calcium. You need calcium simply to breathe, folks. Another thing, your brain right now is thinking about a lot of things, you know, probably a little bit about what's being said right now and a whole bunch of bit about what you're going to do this July 4th weekend. Well, your ability to think thoughts and have one neuron communicate to a neighboring neuron requires the release of neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter does not get released if calcium is not available. So even your nervous system and your ability to think that we all take for granted depends upon a healthy amount of calcium in the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so it enables, calcium enables nervous system health, including thinking, okay? Calcium is huge. One last thing I'll mention to you. There are certain glands that will release certain hormones into the bloodstream that require calcium to release their content. So calcium is, in some cases, important for the release of hormones into your body. Okay, so I want you to think about that. We kind of have this idea from the commercials that we see on television that drinking milk is good for us because it contains calcium. Well, now we know that vitamin D is necessary to absorb the calcium. And we know that calcium is important not only in bone health and teeth health, but muscle functioning, nervous system functioning, and endocrine system functioning. Without calcium, things go bad for you really, really quickly. Okay, so calcium is so important, and we don't get the calcium if we don't have the vitamin D. So vitamin D is so important. Okay. All right. Questions, gang? Okay. All right. So let's see here. Let me just make a couple quick statements about some of the larger anatomy of the skin, and then we will move on. Okay. So major layers of skin. Okay. First, we have, if you have your book available, please take a look at figure 4.8 on page 75. We have the epidermis. Okay, the epidermis is the outermost layer of your skin. Okay, it's the most superficial layer. When you look down on your arm right now and look at your skin, you are looking at the top layer of the epidermis. Okay, that epidermis layer is made of multiple stacked layers of sheets of different kinds of epithelial cells. Okay, and so I'm not going to go into the detail I do with my A&P students, but there's actually different kinds of epidermal cells. At any rate, that epidermis, it could easily be made of 75 to 150 different layers of epithelial cells laying on top of each other. Okay.
I'm sorry, what diagram are you looking at? Because I'm not seeing this.
Figure 4.8, page 75.
Oh, 4.8. Got it.
Okay. Thank you for speaking up. Please continue to do that. All right, so the epidermis is made of many rows of epithelial cells. Okay. Typically 75 to more than 150. All right. So you can see where the epidermis is on page 75. And the epidermis is highlighted as a bracket on figure 4.8, a bracket of cells. And underneath that, there's another bracket which says the dermis. Okay, the dermis. This is the innermost layer of your skin. It's made of a variety of cells and also a whole bunch of extracellular matrix. Okay? So this is deep or underneath the epidermis. It's made of a variety of cells, including cells that function in the immune system. Okay, that's a topic for another day. Made of a variety of cells, including cells that function in immunity, and a lot of extracellular matrix. Okay. All right. Now, number 3 here, and this one, I'm going to put an asterisk here because it's something that is a bit of a point of confusion. Okay. And it refers to the hypodermis that you see on page 75. Okay. Technically, the hypodermis is not part of your skin. It's technically not part of your skin. It's not considered to be part of your skin by scientists. Obviously, the hypodermis is immediately underneath the dermis, and books put it there so you can see the relation of one kind of tissue to another kind of tissue, but the hypodermis is technically not part of your skin. And the reason for that is that scientists over the years that have been studying this have been able to determine that the cells that make up the hypodermis do not share an embryological, they do not share a common ancestor with the cells that make up the dermis or the epidermis. Okay? So technically the hypodermis is not part of your skin because the cells in the hypodermis do not share a common ancestor with cells that make up the dermis or epidermis. Okay? All right. Folks, do you have any questions right now? I mean, I bet you, if we surveyed some of you, I bet you some of you probably have a tattoo, one or more tattoos on your body. And obviously, when you get a tattoo like that on page 76 of your textbook, figure 410, you can see that, you are injecting ink into the dermal layer of your skin, which is why it becomes permanent. What does common ancestor refer to, Julia? Common ancestor, okay, so let me see here. Common ancestor means that if you went back in time, two different categories of cells would have had a common starting point. Okay, but apparently the cells of the hypodermis and dermis don't share a common starting point. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. Okay, folks, do you have any questions right now about your skin, about the physical makeup of your skin, the functions of the skin, or the tissues that we find embedded in the fabric of the skin itself?
Yes, when you say the epidermis is made of rows of epithelial cells up to 75 to 150, what do you mean by rows?
Okay, thank you for saying something. If you look very carefully, and unfortunately, I mean, your book is pretty good, but it doesn't quite always have the detail we might want. If you look carefully at the bracket of the epidermis on page 75, do you have that available to you?
Yes.
Okay, then you see the bracket there is pointing to a section where there's a bunch of pink, and you notice that that pink is made of little circular cells, and they go across. They're kind of stacked like bricks on a brick wall. That's what I would mean by rows of cells, kind of like.
So you're talking a height, not a width, because it didn't make any. The way I was depicting rows was across, and that's not enough to make up obviously skin. So.
Right. So you would have maybe 150 rows of cells going across the surface of the skin, and each row is stacked on top of each other like the rows of brick in a brick wall.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else? How thick is the epidermis, Quinn? I'm estimating right now, but I would say maybe a few millimeters, maybe 3, 4, 5 millimeters. Okay, other questions? Okay, gang, do you have any questions from this chapter 4, which we're basically at the end of at this time? Okay. All right. Well, gang, let's jump off the deep end and get into chapter 5 then. Chapter 5 is the last chapter I need to give you a little support on for your exam coming up on Thursday. Chapter 5, okay, is the skeletal system. All right. Now, probably about 5 years ago, this course went through a revision where some of our nursing faculty were worried that students in 111 were not getting a strong enough exposure to aspects of anatomy. So we tended to beef the course up a little bit in terms of anatomy coverage, and you may notice that one of your labs in the future will be involved with really getting to know parts of the skeleton and the major muscles of the body. So that's a topic for another day. But we are going to spend some time on talking about what makes up your skeleton and the cells that make up bones. Okay, and from your study guide that I'm going to expect you to label some of the bones of the skeleton. As a teacher, it would be much better from my perspective if I had you in class and I could require that you memorize this content, because that's really necessary. But obviously you're going to be sitting at home with your books open, so that essay is going to be pretty easy for you, okay? But I would ask you to look at it this way. You may cheat your course to get the grade, but you're still not going to cheat reality. If you need to know this material for a future career and you don't know it, you're not going to be able to cheat yourself through that, right? So if you have any inclination that you're going into a medical-oriented career, why not spend some time up front to get some of this basic anatomy memorized? So, okay, here we continue here about the skeletal system. Let's talk about functions of the bones. Okay, well, first off, obviously, is support. And in the sense that your bones, which lock together to form your skeleton, provide a solid, firm, rigid framework to hang your soft tissue around. If we didn't have this framework to hang our soft flesh around, basically all of us, myself included, we would all look like Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars. Okay, we'd just be this goo of soft tissue that kind of lie on the floor. Okay, but fortunately it's not like that because we have this skeleton. Provide a rigid framework to support our soft tissue. That's certainly one function of bone. Secondly, your bones are involved in movement. Now, of course, bones by themselves cannot move you. They've got to be linked to the muscles by tendons, but in concert or in cooperation with the muscles, the skeleton will help you move, okay? So through interaction with muscles, helps you move. Protection, okay, that can't be denied, right? Since the bones are, I mean, if you've ever had a bone injury, you know they're not that hard. I mean, bones can be injured and it can be quite painful. But compared to our softer tissues, bone is fairly hard and it can actually protect some of our organs, right? Your ribs protect your lungs, the vertebrae in your vertebral column protect your spinal cord, the bones of your skull protect your brain. Obviously, these are extremely important structures that need protection, and so bones can provide some limited physical protection. Provide limited physical protection to brain, spinal cord, lungs, etc. Okay. Now, your bones are also going to be pivotal in the production of your blood cells. Okay, you know that, well, you will know if you don't know that your bone has two different kinds of bone marrow. Can anybody tell me which form of bone marrow is responsible for the production of your blood cells? Okay, Emily, thank you very much. That's correct. It's the red. Okay, so red bone marrow, which is inside, deep in the interior of your bones, contains a special kind of cell that allows us to make our blood cells. Red bone marrow contains stem cells that allow us to manufacture blood cells, okay? And please don't, sometimes students get a little confused, right? We have red bone marrow. Red bone marrow contains stem cells that make both red and white blood cells, okay? The red bone marrow doesn't make just red blood cells, it also makes white blood cells as well. All right. And then storage. Your bones are actually sort of a storage structure as well. Okay, and there's two aspects to this. Okay, your bones will be used to store a bunch of triglyceride that are part of the yellow bone marrow. Okay, so you have a lot of fatty tissue in the yellow bone marrow of bones, and that fatty tissue is just loaded with triglyceride, which is a type of lipid, as you know, which is basically the equivalent of a charged battery. Okay, it's a fuel cell, if you will, biochemical energy contained in the triglyceride molecules. And then not only do we have yellow bone marrow, which is used to store triglyceride, but the extracellular matrix of your bone will be used to store important minerals that your body needs to function, such as calcium and phosphorus being the two predominant types. Okay, and we just spent a little bit of time talking about how important calcium is to the functioning of your body. All right, so here's a couple statements about the functions of your bones, okay? And please remember, if it's not obvious at this point, remember that each bone of your body is an organ, okay? Each bone of your body is an organ. That might seem weird to think of a bone as an organ because we think of them as bones. But each bone of the skeleton is an organ. It's a three-dimensional object made of multiple tissues that are working together to carry out the jobs of the body that need to happen. Okay, do you have any questions so far? Okay, let's keep on going. All right, so now we know something about the functions of bones. Okay, just a little bit, just enough to be a little dangerous. And let's start. What I want to do is start talking about the makeup or composition of bone. And for this, I'm going to rely, well, let's see here. You know what, before I do that, I want to start talking to you about some of the different types of cells that we find in our bone tissue. So let's talk about cells found in bone tissue or that influence the physiology of bone tissue. Okay, so, right. Cells found in bone tissue or that influence the physiology of bone tissue, because there are actually some cells that are not located in your bones but still release substances which influence how the bones do what they do. And I'll tell you about one of those in just a moment. Okay, so first off, okay, let's see. First off, we have a type of cell which is, okay, So some of the cells I'm going to share with you folks are actually, there's no pictures of these things, unfortunately, in your textbook, but these cells are mentioned throughout the reading of this chapter. For example, on page 88 of your textbook, one of the cells I'm going to talk about is highlighted in boldface type on the left column of page 88, and it's called an osteoblast. Okay, so osteoblasts, folks, the osteoblasts are what we refer to as bone-forming cells. Okay, these are cells of the body that make the mature skeleton that you think of when you think of as a skeleton. Okay, you may know already from having read this chapter that when you're a fetus, okay, and your skeleton is initially developing, well, your skeleton starts out made from cartilage and not bone, right? So your skeleton actually begins to develop in its form and its shape and its size and its dimensions as tissue of cartilage, not bone tissue, which is more properly known as osseous, O-S-S-E-U-S, osseous tissue. Okay, so the osteoblasts are bone-forming cells. These are responsible for the development of your skeleton as you think of it today. Okay, so in other words, these cells help convert the primitive cartilage that initially makes up your skeleton into the more mature bone or osseous tissue of your adult skeleton. Okay, these cells help convert the primitive cartilage that initially makes up your skeleton into the more mature bone tissue of your adult skeleton. Okay, so if you want an idea of what the cartilage skeleton looks like, you can look at figure 5.2 on page 88 and you'll see an example of that. Okay. All right, so osteoblasts are pivotal in converting the cartilage into bone. Quinn, do you know why we start with cartilage? Nobody truly knows the answer to that. However, we can guess at it. Certainly it seems reasonable to make a guess that, you know, when you're starting out in life, you're in a very confined space of your mother's womb, that you want to have a skeleton that has a great deal of flexibility because it's a very confined space, right? So actual mature bones are not that flexible. Cartilage is much more flexible, okay? All right, so we have osteoblasts. Another kind of cell that we typically find in our bone are osteocytes. Okay, osteocytes are probably best known as mature bone cells. Okay, certainly in your body, in my body, and everybody in the class right now, as adults, the majority of cells we find in our bones at this point are going to be the osteocytes. So, you know, your bones at this stage in your life as an 18-year-old or older is predominantly made of osteocytes, okay? These osteocytes actually develop from the osteoblasts in a process called, okay, so here's a question coming, okay? When one type of cell changes or transforms into another type of cell, what is this called? Folks, do you know what it's called when one kind of cell transforms into a different kind of cell. In perhaps a little bit of a ridiculous analogy, what I'm saying is, we all know that caterpillars metamorphosize into butterflies, or if you like the old horror movies, right? A man transforms into a werewolf. I'm literally talking about that kind of change. What's that process called when one cell changes into another type of cell? Do you know? Let me give you a hint. The answer to the question is a word that starts with the letter D as in David. Okay, I guess maybe I got you here today. Okay, folks, the name of this process when one cell transforms into another type of cell is called differentiation. Okay, differentiation. When one kind of cell becomes another kind of cell, that's an example of differentiation. That's an example of the caterpillar transforming into the butterfly. Okay, differentiation is complicated, to put it simply. It's not duplication, Pete. Duplication means you make a copy of the cell. Okay, so if you have a kidney cell and you duplicate it, it's a kidney cell. But differentiation could mean that a kidney cell changes and becomes a heart cell. You see the difference? Okay. So differentiation always involves a change in the cell's behavior, a change in the cell's function, a change in the cell's job, what it does. And to do that, differentiation requires a change in gene expression, okay? This is always accompanied by a change in gene expression. Quinn, when will this occur? And what cells? Okay, so Quinn, when this occurs, this process of differentiation will occur in the last trimester of the pregnancy. At least it will start there, and it will finish as you grow up in childhood and become a mature adult. Okay, so it's not a process that finishes in like a day. It can take years for this to come to completion. Okay, so but the process of differentiation of some osteoblasts differentiating into osteocytes will begin before you are born. You have a second part to your question: what cells do this? Well, again, folks, every cell of your body has the potential to be differentiated. Okay, you think about it. At the earliest stage of your life, you were simply a single egg cell that was fertilized with a sperm from your father. That's what all of us started out as. And so those cells begin to grow and reproduce and divide. So one cell becomes two, two becomes four, four to eight, eight to 16, 16 to 32. You get the idea. At some point in that developmental process, certain cells that had been duplicates of other cells, they begin to change what they do. They begin to differentiate so that by the time you are born, you actually have a heart and a kidney and a gallbladder in your body, right? And that's because cells that started from a common origin begin to differentiate. Okay, other cells, other questions? All right, so I'm going to fill in that blank with the term differentiation. Okay. So the osteocytes are common in our adult skeletons at this point, but there's also another category of cell which is also very common in our bodies and in the bones of our skeleton, and these are osteoclasts. Okay. So, osteoclasts are known as bone remodeling cells. Bone remodeling cells. Okay, think about it. You know, maybe in the past 10 years, you remodeled your bathroom at your house or your kitchen or something like that. In other words, you changed its appearance, you changed its composition. Well, the bones of your skeleton are continually remodeling themselves based on environmental pressures that you place your body in. For example, okay, you know, I suspect that most of us, being that we're all stuck at home and perhaps not getting outside as much as we used to because of the restrictions on things, and maybe we don't go out to the gym like we used to because of these things, I bet you some of us are having a decline in our physical fitness. So maybe while we were all in lockdown for a couple months, you didn't get to lift weights at the gym. Because you were not lifting weights, your bones started to remodel and become less dense because your body says, well, hey, you know, if you're not going to be lifting heavy objects, I don't need to maintain a very dense bone structure. But then if you've been away from the gym for 3 months and then you start going back and you start lifting weights again, obviously your muscles are probably going to be sore, but also your bones, because they became more lightweight in one sense, they have to increase their structure and become more dense so that they don't become damaged as you lift increasing amounts of weight. Okay. Your bone density increases with weightlifting and decreases with couch potato activities. All right. Okay, so your bones are not dumb static things that remain constant through your life. They if there's anything constant, they are constantly changing. Pete, are you trying to say bones can grow when working out? I'm trying. If you're a child and you exercise, that can influence your bone growth. What I'm saying as an adult, Pete, is that your bones are not going to get bigger, but they're going to get denser. You're going to deposit more minerals into the extracellular matrix. So if you're lifting weight, you're going to store a lot of minerals in the extracellular matrix to make the matrix denser, more rigid, stronger, to produce stronger bones so you can lift the weight. And if you're not weightlifting, if you're not exercising or putting stress on the bones, you won't store as much mineral, so they will be lighter. They will be less dense. Okay. Other questions? All right, so the osteoclasts, they actually develop from some of the osteocytes. Okay, so what you should have in your, well, as a ridiculous analogy, if an osteoblast was a man, and then the man transformed into a werewolf, the osteocyte would be a werewolf. And then if the werewolf transformed into a vampire, the vampire would be the osteoclast. Okay, so these are all related to each other at some genetic level. Okay, because the osteoclast develops from the osteocyte develops from the osteoblast, and presumably the osteoblast formed from some more primitive stem-like precursor cell. Okay, questions? All right. So at this time, your bones and my bones predominantly have osteoclasts and osteocytes in them, but even in mature bone, you're going to find a small reservoir of osteoblasts even in your bones today. Okay? But the quantity and percentages of these cells that make up your bone do change up and down throughout your life. Let's continue here. Not only are you going to find these cells in your bone, you're also going to find another category cell called a fibroblast. Okay. Fibroblasts are types of, a fibroblast is a type of connective tissue cell. Okay. And that should not be a surprise because bone is connective tissue, right? We know that already. In fact, you tell me, is bone connective tissue proper or specialized connective tissue? Is bone connective tissue proper or specialized connective tissue? Okay, Matt, you took a shot. No, it's specialized. It's not both, it's specialized. Okay, folks, gentle nudge. Got to be some more studying going on. Okay, you got 2 days before your exam. Okay, all right. Let's continue here. Fibroblasts, a type of connective tissue cell. And what I want to say about this is that fibroblasts are a type of cell that are involved in the early stages of healing a bone fracture. Okay. Okay. Now, the process of healing a fractured bone is on page 90, figure 5.5. Okay, that's not something that I'm going to hold you to in any great detail. I'm simply pointing it out that it's there for you in your normal textbook reading. But what fibroblasts do in the hours immediately following a bone fracture, maybe you fell down outside while you were playing a sport or something and you fractured your fibula or something like that in your lower leg. Okay, obviously that's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. But in the hours after you've fractured that bone, assuming that the bones have not, assuming that the two ends of the bone that have fractured apart from each other, assuming they are not misaligned, then your body will start the process of sealing that fracture up. And it begins with the fibroblasts, because what the fibroblasts do is that they physically move, they physically travel into the open space between the bones that should be connected, and they start manufacturing a whole bunch of collagen protein, which acts as sort of a band-aid to help bring the bones together and lock them back into position. Okay. Fibroblasts secrete collagen into the fracture location in order to provide a temporary fix to the fracture. Okay. Now fibroblasts can't do the final coverage. Fibroblasts can't do the final fix. That's going to involve the osteoblasts forming actual new bone tissue. But to help reduce swelling, to help reduce pain, the fibroblasts will go in there and fill in the gap a little bit with collagen. Okay. All right. So, okay, in your notes, okay, cells 1 through 4. the osteoblasts, osteocytes, osteoclasts, and fibroblasts are physically located in the bone. Okay? So we'll put a little asterisk here that you know about that. The fifth kind of cell I'm going to mention here is actually not in your bone. Okay, it's not in your bone. Okay, and these are cells of the anterior pituitary gland. Can anybody tell me what part of your body I find the pituitary gland? Not the thyroid, but that was a good guess. Thank you for trying, Emily. Where do I find the pituitary gland? How many of you have a pituitary gland? Okay, good, 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 good. Thank you. It's in the brain, right? So here we go, folks, right? The brain's sort of the master control computer of the body in many regards. So in the brain, there's a small cluster of cells which forms the pituitary gland. It's sort of on the bottom of the brain, if you will. And these cells release a whole bunch of different substances, but the thing that's important for bone physiology is growth hormone. So cells of the anterior pituitary gland found in the brain release growth hormone, which travels to the bones of the skeleton via the bloodstream, right? So this is a hormone. So it's a hormone. It's an endocrine hormone because it's getting into the bloodstream. Okay, and it goes to the bones, and the bones respond to the growth hormone by reproducing themselves and by physically enlarging their volume. Okay. All right. So maybe we need to talk just a little bit about that. Okay. Let's talk. Let's change our topic here, but stay with the theme of bone growth. Okay. So do you have any questions at the moment? All right. Okay, so when your bones grow, okay, some information about bone growth is on page 89 of your textbook, figure 5.3 and 5.4. Okay, and again, you know, I do not have any surprise essays about these processes. I mean, I basically told you what's going to be on your exam. There's a few areas I didn't tell you in great detail because I want you to think. I want you to think in the moment of the exam, okay? But at any rate, for your bones to grow, typically their bones are responding to the release of growth hormone from the pituitary gland in the brain, okay? Bones get larger and sometimes wider by responding to growth hormone released by the pituitary gland in the brain, okay? And so you can see on figure 5.4, page 89, that, for example, in most of your bones, particularly the long bones, like the femur of your leg, the humerus of your arms, these long bones, there's an area at the end of the bones that's actually referred to as the growth plate, okay? And so the growth plate, perhaps strangely enough, is actually made of cartilage. It's not made of bone cells. It's still made of cartilage, which harkens back to the cartilaginous beginning of your skeleton as an embryo before you were born, okay? at the end of long bones, there is a section called the growth plate, okay, which is also known as the cartilaginous growth plate or the epiphyseal growth plate. Okay, so if you hear growth plate or cartilaginous growth plate or epiphyseal growth plate, we are referring all to the same thing, which is that object you see in figure 5.4. Okay, so the cartilage cells that are in the growth plates, they actually have receptors that allow them to bind to the growth hormone released from the brain and travels through the bloodstream. So these cells will respond to the growth hormone, and when they respond, what they do is they reproduce, they increase their volume, and they start to differentiate into actual osteocytes. Okay. In response to growth hormone, the cartilage cells will reproduce. That means you increase the number of cells present. They will increase their volume. So they get physically larger, right? These cells get physically larger. And to do that, they have to take in water, okay? So here's a question for you. I'm not going to answer it for you because you should know the answer to this question. You need to know that you need to be able to answer questions like this on your exam on Thursday. Okay? For cartilage cells to take in water, the environment outside the cartilage cells must be, and you fill in the blank, hypertonic or hypotonic or isotonic. I'm not going to answer that. You answer that. Okay? And then finally, let's see, what was the last thing that I mentioned? Yes, the cartilage cells will begin to differentiate into osteocytes. Okay, so you can see there's a lot going on here when your bones actually grow. A lot of things have to happen at the cartilaginous growth plate. Now, okay, I will say a couple more things here. I wish we were together because it's so much easier when we're together because I can see your faces, I can tell what you understand or maybe what you're struggling with. But you know, let me stop sharing my screen so we can kind of see each other a little bit. Okay. Do any of you know anyone that ever damaged a growth plate when they were a child? Do you know anybody that maybe had an injury to their leg or their arm as they were a teenager and not finished growing? Okay, Quinn, all right. So would you be willing to share any details of that? You don't have to be personal about it, but I mean, what was the circumstances with your ex-girlfriend, and what did the doctors do to help her, if anything?
Well, I don't know what they did to help her, but I know she was riding her bike and then she ran, went straight into a mailbox.
Okay.
And it was in her arm, like her shoulder. The mailbox hit her there.
Okay. What you say was her shoulder? Do you know if it was her humerus? Was it her clavicle? Was it her scapula? Do you have any idea?
I think it was a scapula.
Okay. Do you know if the doctors did anything, or they just kind of let it heal as best it could?
I think they just let it heal as best they could, as far as I can remember her story.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. How about the rest of you? Do you know anybody that maybe damaged a growth plate? Jennifer, your son had a small fracture on his growth plate sliding into a base. So in a leg bone? Foot. Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. Was there any long-term impact, or is your son okay?
Hi, yes, he is actually okay. He had a walking boot for maybe like 4 to 6 weeks, but he seems to be fine now. It was just a bad call by the coach.
Okay, Jennifer, thanks for sharing. I'm glad he's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Folks, what I'm getting at is think about your thigh. Think about your left thigh. Think about the femur that's inside that leg, that long bone, that femur. What do you think's going to happen if you're 14 years old and your body's trying to have a growth spurt? And let's say you were in a car accident and you broke the femur and there was physical damage to the growth plate of the femur, so that the left femur cannot grow anymore because of the damage to the growth plate. As your body continues to grow, what's going to happen? What are you going to look like if your left leg does not get longer, but your right leg does get longer? Are you going to be deformed? Your legs are uneven, right? I mean, you're going to be out of balance, right? You're going to have uneven growth. That's right. Folks, that's a very real danger if you have somebody that damages a growth plate when they're in their childhood or teen years, because it causes an imbalance in your body. And long story short, what I'm getting at is, if that problem is not repaired, if it's not fixed, you can have long-term health consequences for it. Let's stick with the leg analogy, okay? If your left leg stops growing, but your right leg keeps growing, do you imagine that that might do something to your hips? Where the left leg connects into the hip socket and your right leg connects into the hip socket, it's going to twist your hip. What I'm saying is your bones are going to be out of alignment, and they're going to rub together in unnatural ways that they shouldn't be happening. That's going to create a very specific kind of inflammation or inflammatory disease that you know the name for. What is this inflammatory disease I'm talking about? It starts with an A. Yes, arthritis, Alyssa, Matt, Emily, good. That's what I'm saying. That if you have damage to your growth plate at a bad location of the body, like a leg, that doesn't get medical attention, you will have development of premature arthritis in your body, which can create a great deal of pain for years to come. Obviously, not a good outcome that you would want for anybody. Okay? Okay, thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that about your father. He broke his femur and he does have a limp. Yes, obviously there are different things that can happen, but that does not surprise me. This is very serious stuff, okay? So there was a question about how do you fix that? Well, that's complicated. But a couple things. You know, if you're 14 years old and you have a lot of growing left to do, then you need to try your best to fix that. So if the growth plate is damaged, typically what will happen is, you know, say around the leg, the doctors will put a metal brace around the leg where the metal brace can literally be ratcheted apart. Okay? And so by literally stretching the leg, by slowly stretching the leg, you can actually force the bone to grow. So even if the growth plate has been damaged, if you put a mechanical stress on the shaft of the leg with a metal brace, you can get it to grow. Okay, so that's one thing that can be done. If you are 18 and you damage your growth plate, but you are almost done growing, then typically what doctors will suggest is that you allow them to surgically go into the other leg, the healthy leg, and destroy the growth plate in that leg so that both of your legs stop growing at the same time. But since you're already almost done growing, there's very little impact on you because you've reached your full height, and because both legs are at the same length, your hip joint will stay healthy and you won't have the premature development of arthritis. Pete, can bone growth pills help? Well, it depends what's in the pill. I mean, there are pills that you can take. You can get growth hormone that can be pharmaceutically provided, but if you're giving a person growth hormone, it doesn't matter because the growth plate's been damaged. It will not respond to it. So typically you need a more mechanical intervention at that point. Typically need some brace or maybe surgery to correct the issue. Okay. Other questions? Okay, please raise your hand if you have arthritis in your body right now. Everybody should have their hand up. Raise those hands up. You have it, folks. Quinn, you have it. I guarantee it. Okay. Everybody starts developing arthritis the moment they are born. Everybody. It's just that when you're younger, you don't have it so badly that you feel it yet. But I guarantee you it's there. And it's going to get worse as you get older. By the time you're ancient like me, you're going to feel it. Okay? Everybody, even a 5-year-old child, has some measurable amount of arthritis in his or her body. Quinn, you have tendinitis. Yes, that's a different inflammatory condition, but obviously that's also painful. Okay? Okay, so all these wonderful things you get to look forward to. Okay? Any questions right now? Okay. All right, gang, good job. Let's go back to taking some notes, okay? We're going to switch from bone growth to bone composition, looking at the pictures on page 87, figure 5.1. Okay. Let's see here. Yes, there's one more thing I need to talk about, the bone growth. Okay, so this growth plate that I mentioned in your notes, okay, this cartilaginous growth plate, okay, when you are young and still growing, the growth plate is made of cartilage and is called the cartilaginous growth plate. Okay, you know that already. That's just a repeat of what I've said. When you're young, still growing, the growth plate is made of cartilage and it is called the cartilaginous growth plate. But when you stop growing, right, when when you've reached your biological maturity so that you're not physically going to get any taller. But when you stop growing, the cartilage of the growth plate turns into bone tissue, known as osseous tissue, okay? At this point, the cartilaginous growth plate, is not called the epiphyseal growth plate anymore, okay? Let me change this here to epiphyseal, okay? So you know from information we put up here that the growth plate is called the cartilaginous growth plate or the epiphyseal growth plate. It's all the same thing, okay? But when you stop growing, the epiphyseal growth plate turns into bone, and at this point, the epiphyseal growth plate becomes the epiphyseal line. Okay, it becomes the epiphyseal line. The epiphyseal line does not contain cartilage. It contains bone. The epiphyseal line contains bone. So as you stop growing, that cartilage in your growth plates will ossify into bone tissue, and it will not be capable of growing anymore. Okay? All right, do you have any questions? I need to bring up the chat window here. Okay, chat window's back up. All right. Let's continue here talking about bone structure. And I'm specifically referring to figure 5.1 on page 87. Okay. Okay, so now we know a little bit here. You know, we've gone into some detail. You now know about some of the major functions of your bone. You know about the cells that we find in our bone and some cells that influence bone physiology from the brain. We know a little bit about how your bones grow as you're a young person and how it ossifies into bone tissue as an adult. Now let's take a look at the actual structure of bone on page 87. And so when we talk about this, it's important that you appreciate that the outer surface of the bone that you look at when you're looking at a Halloween skeleton, right? I mean, at Halloween, there's lots of skeletons around and people trying to scare each other. Okay, when you look at that skeleton, you're looking at the outer surface, you're looking at the compact bone. Okay, so that's going to be our starting point here. Compact bone, this is the outermost surface of the bone. Okay, it is very dense. Okay. Now, if you have your textbook, page 87, look at picture B there, and look at the bottom of picture B. You're going to see two brackets, one bracket for spongy bone, the other bracket for compact bone. Okay, so compact bone is the outer thickness of the bone, which would include the outer surface of the bone. Okay. And what I need to point out to you is that the compact bone, the outer surface of the compact bone is actually wrapped in a very special membrane called the periosteum. Okay, so note how the surface of the compact bone is wrapped by a membrane called the periosteum. All right. Let's see. I had misspelled that. Periosteum. 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 Okay. So obviously on a Halloween skeleton that somebody had purchased at, you know, the spirit shop for scaring people, it's not anatomically correct. It's just a plastic facsimile of bone. But in your real body, if a surgeon had to get to your femur or your humerus in the arm, as they would cut away the soft tissue to approach the surface of your bone, they would literally see the periosteum membrane wrapped around the compact bone surface. Okay? The purpose of the periosteum is to provide an anchoring surface for blood vessels and nerve endings to bury themselves into the interior of the bone. Okay, the purpose of the periosteum is to provide an anchoring surface for nerve endings and blood vessels that embed themselves deep into the bone. If you look at that picture on page 87, you notice we have some tubing there. Some of it's yellow, some of it's red, some of it's blue. What do the colors mean? Colors of figure 5.1b. What do they mean? Folks, what does yellow mean? Okay, Quinn, that's a nice guess, but no, that's not the bone marrow. Okay, Matt, I think you probably have the right information there. Okay, yellow is going to be for a nerve. What's red for? What's red for? Okay, all right. Okay, Matt, artery is a pretty safe guess, but believe it or not, there are times where that's not what it refers to. The better way to think about this is that red refers to a blood vessel carrying oxygenated blood. And where folks get tripped up with is when we talk about pulmonary circulation in the lungs, the pulmonary arteries actually carry deoxygenated blood, and the pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood, which is exactly opposite the rest of the body. So that's a trouble spot. Okay, so red means blood vessel carrying oxygenated blood, and blue means a blood vessel carrying deoxygenated blood. Okay. All right. So, okay, what else should we say here about the compact bone? Oh, yes, okay. You know, there's certain language that we're hoping that you get comfortable with in this course and that maybe you take with you when you leave this course, if for nothing else, to have a better conversation with your family doctors. Of course, we expect you to know what cells are. We expect you to know what a nucleus is, things like that. Here we have a vocab word that's pretty critical for chapter 5, and that's osteon. Take note of the osteons. Okay, an osteon, you see on picture B there. The osteon is considered the structural building block of compact bone. Okay, if you look carefully, the osteon's like a cylindrical tube, and you notice that in the compact bone you have multiple cylindrical tubes stacked next to each other. So the osteons go a long way to making up the structure of the compact bone. And if you look very carefully, you know, what do you find moving through the interior of the osteon? Well, you find these red, blue, and yellow tubes that we've defined for you, right? We're going to find the arteries and veins and nerve endings that go into and serve the tissue of the bone to allow, you know, the blood to deliver nutrients, to have the blood remove waste products from the interior of the bone, to have the nervous system be aware of what is happening in the bone. Okay, so the osteon is the structural building block of each compact bone. Okay. Note that the osteons are themselves made of bone cells, right? Predominantly osteocytes and osteoclasts. Okay. All right. All right, folks. Do you have any questions about the compact bone? Okay. All right. What I want to do is finish up these notes here in maybe 10 minutes so we can do a little bit of quizzing with you to get you warmed up for your exam on Thursday. Okay, so let's see what we can finish here. So the compact bone is the outermost thickness of your bones. Interior or deep to that is what is known as the spongy bone. The spongy bone you see on picture B, you see the bracket there, and you notice its appearance is considerably different to the compact bone. Okay, so we have the spongy bone. Okay, this is a more light and airy and open network of bony tissue that's interior to the compact bone. Okay. The spongy bone, there's actually a microscope image of the real thing on picture E on the bottom right corner of page 87, and you can see your book describes it as the internal struts of spongy bone which support the bone from within. Okay, the spongy bone has a very Swiss cheese appearance in that there's cheese, but there's actually openness and airiness to it. There's a lot of hollow space in there. Okay, now the little tubes or trusses, if you will, of the spongy bone actually have a special name. They're actually referred to as trabeculae. Okay, trabeculae is T-R-A-B-E-C-U-L-A-E, trabeculae. Okay. And the term trabeculae literally means tiny girder. That's what it means. All right. So your spongy bone is made of these tiny girders called trabeculae with a lot of open space. Okay. The open space of the spongy bone means that your overall bone can be considerably lighter than it would otherwise be if it were solid, which means that our muscles and things get to be a little bit smaller because they don't have to lift as much mass. Okay. The openness of the spongy bone means our bones are lighter than they would be if they were solid. Okay. And that openness, you've always heard that the universe abhors a vacuum, or that Mother Nature abhors a vacuum. Well, that openness is often used to store marrow. Okay, so the openness of the spongy bone is where you're going to find your bone marrow. Okay. Now, you may think that you have both red and yellow bone marrow in all of your bones, and that's generally not true. Typically, yellow marrow is going to be predominant in long bones of the body. For example, in your leg femur or in your arm humerus. Those are long bones with a long shaft. Those kinds of bones, you're going to have an abundance of yellow marrow. Okay. Yellow marrow is typically found in long bones of the body, like the femur or humerus. Okay. And red marrow, believe it or not, is typically not found in high levels in long bones. Typically, you find most of your red marrow in short, stubby bones of the body, like your ribs, like certain bones of your skull, and your vertebral column. Vertebrae, bones of the skull. Okay. All right. Folks, any questions about the spongy bone or the marrow that we find in them? Okay. Let me finish this topic. Okay, we're talking about bone composition. So we've got compact bone, spongy bone, and the last thing I need to mention to you is the extracellular matrix. Okay, the extracellular matrix is everything in between the bone cells. So the extracellular matrix is going to be found in both compact bone and spongy bone. Okay. Found throughout the compact and spongy bone. Okay. This is the molecules that make up the composition of the extracellular matrix are typically manufactured and secreted by the osteocytes, by the mature bone cells. Okay. And so there's two things here that I think I might have alluded to in a different lecture, but I'll just put them into your notes for completeness sake at this time. Typically, the extracellular matrix is going to be made of two kinds of things. You're going to have, the matrix is made of collagen fibers. Okay, so you know that collagen is a type of protein. In fact, you have more collagen protein in your body than you have any other kind of protein in the body. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the human body. Okay, so you have collagen fibers, which are simply chains of collagen protein. And their purpose is to give the bone a little bit of elasticity, a little bit of flexibility, right? I mean, obviously, none of us really want to flex our bones because it's painful and you might break it. But the reality of it is you can flex your bone a little bit and it will not break. And that little bit of flexibility is due to the collagen fibers. And then in addition to the collagen fibers, not only are they present, but you're also going to find a lot of mineralized salts, which are basically clumps of calcium and phosphorus minerals, which if you've studied other courses or read other things about bone, is actually called hydroxyapatite. Okay, a mixture of mineralized salts, particularly calcium and phosphorus. Okay. Now these minerals, they harden, which gives the bone rigidity and hardness. Okay. So I don't know if you'll know what I'm talking about. Probably you will. But, you know, if we think about steel reinforced concrete, you know, if you've ever been in a city where they're building a new skyscraper, you might have seen chunks of giant concrete with steel sticking out of the concrete. Or you might have seen a bridge or a highway that's being constructed in the summertime with huge chunks of concrete and steel rebar sticking through the interior and sticking out the side of those chunks of concrete. Okay, the collagen fiber kind of acts like the steel to provide some flexibility to the concrete, whereas the mineralized salts provide a little bit of aspects of the hardness and firmness of the concrete. So that I like to think of the extracellular matrix kind of as your body's equivalent of steel reinforced concrete. Okay. All right. Questions at this time? All right. Okay. Do you have any questions about today's notes on chapter 5? Okay, you're staying very silent. So bear with me a moment. I need to get some notes here. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time. All right. And what we're going to do now is play a little bit of hangman. Okay. And I'm going to use this as a way to quiz you to see if you know what you should know. Okay. And so what we will do, normally if we were in class together, I'd have students on the left side of the room and the right side of the room, and you folks compete against each other. That really doesn't work all that well since we don't really have a room here. And so what I will do is simply give you this scenario. Let's say that I'm a villain and I have kidnapped your mother, father, little brother, and little sister. Okay, you're all part of a giant family, but I've kidnapped people in your family. Okay, if you get a question wrong, I'm going to put a body part of a family member in a virtual noose. Okay, and if you folks don't get these things right, we're going to hang your virtual family members. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask each of you a question. We'll go for maybe 15 minutes or something asking questions. I will specifically recognize each of you by name and give you as an individual a question, and you will have 10 seconds to type the answer out into the chat window. Here's the deal. I see Quinn's face. She's in pain right now. Okay? Here's the deal. If you cannot answer my question in 10 seconds, there's a good chance you're going to have to look it up on the exam. And if you have to look up every question on the exam, you're not going to do well on the exam. You see my meaning? So this is for fun, gang, but it is a gentle warning that preparation for the exam has to occur. There has to be real study for the course. So we'll do it online here, 10 seconds. Whoever has the question, you should be the only person to type the answer into the chat window. After that, if you don't get the question right, then I'll open it up to everybody to see if at least someone can answer it for us, okay? All right, let's have some fun with this, okay? And let's see what we can do here. Okay. Okay, so if you would prefer to use voice, I'm okay with that. You just have to unmute your microphone, obviously, okay? So bear with me. What I'm going to do is bring up a PowerPoint slide and put our virtual noose up here, okay, where we might start hanging people. Okay, so hold on a second. All right. Okay, now come on, if my screen will cooperate. Bear with me, folks, technical issue. Okay, my chat window's back up and the PowerPoint slide is up. Okay. And all right, so I'm a villain. I got one of those big, long, curly mustaches. And here is the stage. Okay. Here is the stage that I might put your family on, okay? And here is the rope of the hangman's noose. Okay, let's see what we can do here. So I'm just going to use my syllabus that I have in front of me to ask you specific questions. Okay. Oh, what was that? Bear with me, folks. Okay. Fiona, I'm going to give a question to you first since you're first on the syllabus. So Fiona, you have 10 seconds to answer the following question. You can unmute your microphone or you can type it into the chat window what the answer is. Okay, Fiona, here's your question. Fiona, what do ribosomes do inside cells? Fiona, that is 11 seconds. Fiona, do you have an answer for me?
No, sorry.
Fiona, do you have an answer?
No, I'm still checking. So.
Okay, that means you have to look it up during the exam, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a problem. Okay, let's open it up to anybody. What's the answer, folks? What do ribosomes do?
Manufacture protein. Okay.
Okay, they make
Proteins.
proteins. Okay, so thank you. So we got our answer, but Fiona did not get it in the timeline, right? So that means I got to put your father's head in the news. It'd be better if I could actually draw orthodorn, which I cannot. But okay, so here's your father's head. All right, Fiona. We'll be coming back around for you then, okay? So here we go. Matt, you're up next. Okay. Okay. Matt, what characteristic of water explains its ability to be a good temperature buffer?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. Matt, what characteristic of water allows it to be a good temperature buffer?
It's hydrogen bonds.
Okay, Matt. Yes, that is a correct answer. And it was longer than 10 seconds, but I know you needed the question repeated, so I won't add to your father's dilemma on the screen. So that's correct, folks. Being a temperature buffer, water's ability to be a good temperature buffer is linked to its ability to form hydrogen bonds. Okay, so nicely done. Okay, let's see. Jennifer, you are up next. Okay, Jennifer, in the next 10 seconds, please answer the following question. Jennifer, what kind of cell junction allows for the exchange of cytoplasm between the connected cells? Jennifer, that's 14 seconds. Jennifer, do you have an answer for us? Okay, Jennifer, she doesn't have an answer. Let's open it up to everybody. What's the name of the cell junction that allows for cytoplasmic exchange? Okay, Nick, very good. He got it. The gap junction, nicely done. Okay, so we got to add to Dad's dilemma, okay? So I'm going to add Dad's torso up here. Dad's looking rough, okay? Okay, let's continue here. Alyssa, you're next. Okay. Alyssa, please give me an English language definition of aerobic cellular respiration. Alyssa, that's 14 seconds. Do you have an answer for us? Okay, all right. Alyssa, you get the right answer, but not in the time constraint, okay? So, right, aerobic cellular respiration refers to all the chemistry that our cells perform to extract energy from the food you eat, okay? I appreciate you were typing, Alyssa, but remember, you're going to be typing your answers into a computer for your actual exam, so the time does matter. You did do a nice job, but I'm going to add a body part to Dad up here, okay? All right, so Dad now has an arm up here, all right? Okay, let's keep going here. Let me see. Okay, Paquasha, you're up next. Paquasha. Paquasha, here's your question. What is the name of the cell that is responsible for taking care of neurons?
Um, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Is it the glia?
okay. That is correct, but that was in 15 seconds. So you did get the right answer, but not in the time allotted. So nicely done. But just for fun, I'm going to add to Dad up here on the screen. All right, so there's Dad. He's got 2 arms there on him. Okay. Yes, so remember, folks, there's 2 major types of cells in the nervous system, neurons and neuroglial cells. The neuroglial cells, their job, among other things, is to ensure the health and viability of the neurons. Okay, let's continue here. Okay. Peter, you will be next. Okay, Pete, you'll be next. Okay. Pete, if I have two liquids, one of those liquids is in my left hand, the other liquid is in my right hand. The liquid in my left hand has a pH of 9, and the liquid in my right hand has a pH of 4. So which of those liquids, the one with a pH of 9 or the one with pH of 4, has a more basic pH? Okay, that's 15 seconds. Pete, would you have an answer for us? The one on the left with a pH of 4? No, that would be the acid, right? The pH of 9 is the one that's basic. Okay, so just an encouragement to have a look again at those concepts of acids, bases, and the pH scale from chapter 2. Okay. All right. So that means I've got to add a leg to Dad. Okay. So folks, if we get another leg on Dad, Dad is going to have to be buried because he will have been hanged. Okay. All right, let's continue here. Nick, you're up next. Okay, so Nick, all right. Nick, what is the name of the category of cell on our planet that does not have a nucleus? Nick, you have prokaryotic done. That was 8 seconds. Beautifully done. You are correct. Nicely job. We won't add anything to Dad on the screen. Okay. All right. Let's continue here. Okay, Catherine, you're with us next. Okay, Catherine, you're up to bat here, so to speak. Let me see. Okay, Catherine, here's your question. Catherine, if a cell needed to use one of its organelles to defend itself from a virus or bacterium that was infecting the cell and had entered the cell, which organelle would it likely use?
Is that the mitochondria?
Okay, it is not the mitochondria. Do you want to change your answer?
No, I have to look it up.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for trying. I really appreciate it. Okay, folks, so does anybody know the answer? What organelle would a cell use?
Wouldn't it be the liposomes?
Not the ribosomes.
Not libo. I said
Lysosome.
Oh,
Lysosome.
I'm sorry.
Lysosomes.
Lysosomes.
Sorry, never heard it. I've only read it.
Okay, lysosomes. Lysosome. That is correct.
I forgot it had an
Okay.
S.
So, gang, I'm very sorry to say that in the context of our virtual battle here, Dad has passed away. Okay. And so the next person that will be put into the noose is your virtual mother. Okay. I want to go long enough here so that everybody gets a question. So only a few more minutes. Okay. Okay. So here we are with another stage. Okay. And we really don't want mom to be hung because then that's going to leave our virtual children without any parents. Okay. All right. And there's the hangman's noose. Okay. Julia, you are up next. Julia, let me see here. Julia, your question is this. Julia, what is the correct scientific name for a red blood cell? What is the proper scientific name for a red blood cell? What is it called? Okay. Thank you, Julia. You answered hemoglobin in the chat window. That is not correct. Can anybody answer that for us? Okay, Paquasha, you have it right. A erythrocyte. That is correct. A erythrocyte is the correct scientific name for a red blood cell. Very nicely done, Paquasha. Okay, so Julia, I got to put your mother's head in the noose here. Your virtual mom. Okay. All right. So, okay, we got two more folks. Okay, so Quinn, you're next.
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. Let me see here.
Zeppelin, no. Oh, God.
Okay.
No.
Okay, Quinn, here's your question.
Hmm.
Quinn, if a cell wanted to move glucose across its membrane from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration, what transport process would it use?
Facilitated diffusion?
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
Okay, that is incorrect.
Oh, dear.
Okay, folks.
I've been lied to.
Okay, how about the rest of you? Did you hear the wording of the question? The question is this: if a cell wants to move glucose across its membrane from an area of low concentration to high concentration.
I did. I mixed it up. I'm sorry. I didn't misheard you.
Yep. And that's key, right? Because on an exam, you have to ask yourself, did you read the question correctly? Or did you stop reading early and make an assumption that you know what the rest was going to say? Be careful about that because we're all human and we all do that. Okay, so thank you, Emily. That is active transport. Quinn got that wrong, so I get to put mom's torso up on the noose. Okay. And then let me see here. I think I have one more to do. Okay. All right. Let me see here. Okay. Emily, this is your question. And since we're late in the hour here, we're going to make this for all the cheese in the world. If you get this right, mom is saved. If you get this wrong, I'm going to finish mom off. Okay, Emily, your question is this. If you conduct a scientific experiment, if you conduct a scientific experiment, but you fail to account for certain variables that will influence the outcome of your results, what are these variables called? Emily, you've answered control. That is not correct, but the answer does start with the letter C. Anybody have an answer for us? Not conclusion, no. Okay, I'm drawing on mom here. What variables influence the outcome of your results, but because you did not take them into account during your experiment, everything's thrown off? Uh-huh. Okay. Folks, the answer is not constant. The answer is, here, I'll put it in the chat window. The answer is confounding. Confounding variables. Okay. All right, folks. So unfortunately, our virtual children don't have mom and dad anymore. Okay. So this was a silly way to get you to please take your study time seriously, because on Thursday, the exams are timed. You've got 39 minutes to answer 34 vocab questions, and you have an hour and 15 minutes to do a good job writing your essay answers out. I honestly don't think you'll need an hour and 15 minutes for the essays, but you have it. For the vocab, if you're not organized, you might struggle with 39 minutes. Okay? Okay, so we're going to wrap up, gang. Do you have any questions before we say goodbye? Okay. So remember, exam opens up at 7 a.m. on Thursday. Our lecture will start at 12:55 p.m. For lab, please try to have a pack of colored pencils available. Okay? Yeah, Pete, I'll hang on for a while. I'll hang on for a while. Okay. So if you don't need me, I'll see you folks. Take care. And Pete, I'll hang on here. Is time doubled for some people? Time will be doubled for those that are in the testing services program. Yes, for the student services program. Okay. But I need to have documentation of that, right? Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay, Pete, do you still need me privately? Okay. All right. Emily, do you have any questions? Okay, then I'll see you later, okay? Jennifer, Fiona, do you need anything? Okay, have a nice day, Jennifer.
Anybody hear me?
Hold up a sec. Okay. Okay, so right now we have Pete, Marcia, and me online. Okay, Pete, what can I help you with?
Yeah, I have a question. I've been checking with the extra time for the recommendation. Do you have that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Everything that has to happen will be invisible to you. I will take care of it. You will go onto the website, class marker, and you will have double time for both the vocab and the essays.
Okay. At the website, there's the one with the classmarker.com, right?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
The test. Is it classmarker.com?
That's correct.
Okay. I don't see any test there. Is it will be there on Thursday, or that?
When you logged in, you should be able to see something right now called a practice exam. Did you see that? You took that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did that. I did that
Yeah.
yesterday.
So for right now, that's all you will see. But on
Okay,
Thursday, you will see the new exams.
Okay. Just making sure. I don't want
Yeah.
to mess anything up.
No problem.
So the test can be doing